Today, I actually wanted to speak about there's different stages of spiritual awareness. And so in some of the literature that I've read, it is recognised, or it is thought, that there are actually 5 stages of awareness of spirituality. For those of you who might want some references to this lecture or this talk, there's a book called Denial of the Soul, written by M. Scott Peck, who famously wrote The Road Less Travelled. He actually wrote a number of books. This one's quite a good one. And the other one is The Stages of Faith by Professor James W. Fowler. So a lot of these ideas come from those books, and also from the personal experience that I've had through meditative techniques. You don't spend 30 years as a spiritualist without learning something about what's on the other side and what spirituality is about. It is said that there are 5 different stages, so I want to take you through them, and I want you to say right from the outset that it would be a mistake to place anyone that you might know in any given category. Whether they're believers or atheists or whatever, it doesn't really make much difference. People can be atheists and they can still be quite spiritual people. I have found that. So why don't we just go in and start with stage 1. And as you might expect, stage 1 is about the people who are what we might call the new souls on the planet. And that stage can be described as chaotic or antisocial. The problem in the stage the people in the stage may be religious or they may not be religious. Either way, their belief system is profoundly superficial. They don't really care about the spiritual aspects of life at all, because as they are the younger souls on the planet, and their focus is on the self. And they tend to be rather selfish. These people are at the start of their spiritual journey, and as time goes on, they slowly mature. This is the normal maturing process. This is part of the reason why we're here on planet Earth. The growth, the maturing of the soul, is caused by the action of the law of compensation and retribution, which is one of our principles. And some people call this law karma. Whatever name you give it, the result is the same. The young soul, or all of us in fact, experience the same positive and negative experiences that it has caused others to experience. So you somehow get an understanding of what you have caused to other people, whether it be positive or negative. And in this way, by experiencing that experience, the soul grows towards a greater maturity. And so it grows towards the second stage. And the second stage of spiritual awareness is often the complete reversal of the first. This is a very interesting stage because most people are in this stage. And the second stage can be described as formal and institutional. Now, religious fundamentalists fit into this category. So do skeptics. Even though they're not religionists, they are in their own way caught up in their own fundamentalist views. And they are just as fundamentalist as religious fundamentalists. Having known both skeptics and religious fundamentalists, I can tell you that their thinking processes are pretty much the same. They're just stuck. And at this stage, the letter of the law is everything. The feeling is that having left the previous stage was chaotic, you have to be especially vigilant not to slide backwards. And you hear about backsliding in some of the religions. And there is great fear at this stage. That's one of the problems of the stage. There is fear. There is fear of God. That's one of the things that I constantly argue about and talk about, that we should not fear God. There's fear of retribution. There's fear of hell. There's fear of life itself and its spontaneity. So the person in the stage seeks rules and regulations. They want God's law in black and white, so that there's no possibility of offending this God that you have to fear. I'm a God-fearing man. Well, that statement has real concerns for me. So there are, if you look at and I won't go through them, but you'll see religions where they do everything by rote. They pray so many times a day, you have to do this, you have to do that, you can't work on weekends, whatever it might be. But the rules and regulations are the important thing. And this is rules and regulations, that's all there is. Now, even in spiritualism, we do have people who are fundamentalists in some degree because they look at other religions and cannot see the value in them. Now, I went through that stage, having become a spiritualist, and I thought it was the greatest thing on planet Earth. I still think it's the greatest thing on planet Earth. But looking back now, I see the value of some of the other religions. Whilst I would not partake in them, I'm quite happy to walk into a church of any description. Because for me, it's the energies in the church and it is the intent of the people in that church that are important, not so much the belief structure. And I quite happily walk into Christian churches, even though I don't call myself a Christian anymore. We need to be careful not to throw stones, because in a certain sense, we all live in glass houses to a certain extent. None of us are perfect. It's, for me, I try and look at the good, understanding that the lesser things about a religion are there because people look at rules and regulations and are essentially afraid. And one of the things about, if anything is good about our spiritualist philosophy, is it takes the fear out of this thing that we call God, this fear of living, this feeling of being spontaneous and allowing yourself to be. It's one of the lovely things about spiritualism. Look, I was once a Baptist. My early life was as a Baptist. And in the Baptist church, you can't go to the theatre, you can't go to the pictures. Dancing is frowned upon. Well, it was, at least when I used to go there. I'm talking about the 50s and 60s here, so we're going back a long way. You couldn't even sing. We had a couple of young people who were actually very, very good. They actually later on became reasonably famous. I won't go into their names, but these people were at the Baptist church I went to. And they were very, very good musically. And they got up and sang one day, and some people just walked out of the church. Because these people were, and they were singing religious songs. And here we see the extremes, People go from being in a chaotic stage, having no religion whatsoever, then they move into a religion and they become intolerant. And the worst part about that is that they also they think they are absolutely right. You cannot argue with them at this stage. They believe that they have the God-given right to administer their version of God's justice on anyone who dares to disagree with them. And this is where you get fundamentalists who want to control everything. And if you don't agree with them, well, they'll do naughty things to you, nasty things to you. So in the past, we've had, witch burnings. We've actually burnt people at the stake. We've had religious wars. We've had religious terrorism and intolerance, total intolerance of other people's right to worship God as they see fit. Now, a lot of people get stuck in this stage because there is a sense of right and wrong, black and white. They are comfortable because they are not required to think. And in spiritualism, this is the one thing we want you to do is think. Think. So if you're not required to think, you simply obey the rules. Now, thankfully, a lot of people soon learn that God is much bigger than a set of rules. And so we move on to stage 3. Now, this stage can be described as sceptical and individual. People in this group are usually secular. That is to say, they have no particular religious beliefs. These people are prepared to be persuaded by good evidence. They believe in something, but they can't even tell you what that something is. Now, believe it or not, these people are actually spiritual in nature. They're starting to think. So they're starting to question their own religious beliefs. And it is at this point that people will leave the established religions in search for some meaning in life, whatever that might mean. More importantly, some sort of personal experience that will allow them a personal understanding of God and the world around them. It is at this point that we are confronted with a choice. Do we actively seek God, or do we wait for God to come to us? As I said, at this point, it is at this point that people start their spiritual journey, really. Those who come here to our philosophy from other religions or even from being atheists, this is where they usually come from. They're usually in stage 3. They're questioning. They want answers. They're not prepared just to sit there and have things given to them. They want to know. It's a journey of discovery. So I find that the people that I find in spiritualist churches, and even if they just walked in on that very day, they are in stage 3, at least most of them, at least in stage 3. So if we do then decide from this stage to actively seek spiritual awareness, we then move on to stage 4. Now, if we decide to wait, well, then we begin to climb that spiritual mountain by an alternative path. There's a well-known spiritual truth that you cannot sit in your spiritual comfort zone for too long, particularly when you've come into stage 3 and you've decided that you want to know what it's all about. The universe is not going to let you alone after that. Well, certainly didn't leave me alone. The universe is in a state of constant change and nothing stands still. So we cannot stand still for too long. And if we wait too long, we usually end up in a situation that forces us to move forward. You can become ill. You can have the passing of a loved one, some personal crisis in our lives. All of these are ways in which the universe forces us to think about life, about who we are, where we're going, what we are doing. And that thinking forces us out of our comfort zone and literally throws us into stage 4. It literally throws you into stage 4. So let's talk about stage 4. And some suggest that this 4th stage is the most advanced stage of all, because at this point, the universal nature of spirit, that spirit that is inside each and every one of us, becomes a sort of a personal reality. And there are times when we don't think of ourselves as individuals because we understand that there's a vast universe out there and we are somehow part of that. We are part of a larger whole. And at this stage, what is interesting about this stage is that it is the spirit of the law that is important. It is the intent of the spiritual laws. Not so much that we have to have them in black and white. We have to interpret for ourselves what the spirit of the law is. And men and women at this stage are rational, but they don't make a fetish out of it. Because we understand that there are things that cannot be understood with simple, rational thought. It's one of the hardest things I had to learn. That sometimes you have to go beyond what appears to be rational. And you begin to doubt things. You doubt your own doubts. You feel connected to something unseen, and you're just at a loss quite often to define what it is that you feel, what it is that you believe. So stage 4 isn't about, it's actually, in a way, a confusing state, because you've opened everything up. There's all this information out there. There's all this new stuff that you're feeling, that you're beginning to understand, and you're trying to put it all together. But but it's a beautiful time too, because you're learning and you're moving forward. And these people at the stage are very comfortable with the mystery of the sacred. It is a mystery. Let's face it, we don't know it. We just don't know a lot of what goes on in the universe. We know some of it, but a lot of it is still a mystery. And in stage 4, you're happy to call it a mystery. You're happy to say, I don't know. And it is at stage 4 that people will often enter into the service of other people, selfless service, because they recognise those others as being important as well. So life is not just about yourself anymore. It is about other people as well. And when I say service, I don't mean going off to some other country and, I mean just being of service to it, making yourself available if somebody needs help. Looking over next door because you've got an elderly neighbour and you know that they're locked up, and you're just looking on them and say, you're okay, you're doing fine. You're thinking about other people. It's not just purely yourself anymore. And those in stage 4, at this point, you make a conscious decision to go on towards stage 5. Let's talk about stage 5. It is at this last stage, in this scheme of things, that men and women will actively seek a closer union with the spiritual mystery they cannot explain. And at this point, we will give that spiritual mystery a name, and we shall agree to call this mystery God. Now, I hesitate in using that word, because the moment I use the word God, people get in their idea this, white man with a beard, the Santa Claus figure that you can pray to for good things. I've been a good boy all year. How about some presents? That's not the God I'm talking about. I'm talking about the God that created the universe. And I'll speak about that. Those who reach this stage actively seek a closer union with this God. And this can be done in many ways. But in this talk, I'm going to limit myself to the ways that are readily explored for our own philosophy of spiritualism. I will be talking about meditation. But let us understand that what we teach in our philosophy, a lot of their practices are actually incorporated in other religions because they see the value of them, particularly meditation. Now, let's talk about God. In my view of the scheme of creation, and remembering this is my view, and for those new to spiritualism, we have our views. You're allowed to have your own view. It's good because you can talk with people and you can get together and have some good ding-dong arguments about what it all means. We all have a cup of coffee, we all go home with a smile on our face. It's great. It's important to share our ideas. If we don't do that, well, we're just stuck with our own, aren't we? So my view of the scheme of things, God is actually a long way removed from our reality. And I know this idea of a distant God is very upsetting to some people because people are constantly told that you can have a personal relationship with God, like a parent-child relationship. The fact is, and we need to face facts, we don't know what God is. And I mean that sincerely. We do not know what it is that created a seemingly endless universe with many layers of reality, starting from our own physical reality through the many spiritual planes, and finally to the source of all things that we call God. What is God? Well, we don't know. We know that it is. We know that it's there. And even the great guiding spirit, Silverbirch, one of the guiding spirits of our philosophy, said that in the higher planes, where he has his existence, they do not know much more about God than we do. Yes, they are closer to God than we are, close enough to know that it exists, because in the next plane of existence, nobody argues about the existence of God in the same way that we do not argue about the existence of sunshine on our planet, We can clearly see the sunshine, we can feel it. But it's only been of the last 50 odd years that we've actually known what the sun is. 100 years ago, we had no idea what it was that caused the sunshine, how it worked. So in the same way, in the spiritual planes, they know God exists. And they do have a better idea of what it is than what we do. But they don't know it all. That needs to be understood. And even Silverberg said that he didn't fully understand what God is. But let us be clear on one thing. God is infinite, and it is therefore all things. All things are one, even if we can't see that truth. God is part and parcel of our very essence. And so why is it that I'm saying we cannot have a direct relationship? See, it seems like I'm having a bob each way, to use an old term. I'm saying that it's a long way to earth, and yet I'm saying that it's part of us. Well, the reason is that we live with the illusion of separation. The very fact that we live and experience ourselves as separate human beings implies that our perception is bound within the illusion of being separate from God and other people. We see ourselves within ourselves. We see others as other people. But in reality, they are all part of the same consciousness that we call God. Now, if you think that this is just spiritualism, I was listening to a Hindu mystic just last week. Sadhguru is his name, a guru of some sort, giving a lecture at some university somewhere, and he was asked about life after death. Is there life after death? And he said, well, it depends on what you mean by that. There's no life after death for the physical body, that's for sure. But he said life is consciousness. Without consciousness, there is no self-realisation. And consciousness exists at many levels. From the great ocean that is the God that created everything, it manifests in different dimensions. And he says, when you die, the part of the consciousness that is the next level consciousness simply separates out of the body. Now, for goodness sake, look at those words, and that's exactly what we teach. We might have different words for it, but that's exactly what we say. That at death, the spiritual part of you, the part that is you, the part that you recognise as being Domenic or Sue or whatever your name is, that goes on to the next level of existence. So it's not just spiritualism that says that. The Hindus will say that. So do the Buddhists, in fact. They have the same view of what happens. But we live within this illusion of being separate. At the higher levels of consciousness, we are not separate. But that's our reality. Now, it is true that in some magical moments, particularly when you're in meditation, we get a sense of this oneness. This is usually a very brief experience when you're flooded with that beautiful love that you get in meditation. It's a sense of the oneness. The universe opens out for you, and you are flooded. Because you've opened up, you begin to realise that the universe is full of love. That's all there is out there. I know that evil does exist, but evil is a manifestation of human psychology. And it only it exists at this level of, at the physical level. It exists at the next level to a certain extent, but very low levels of the astral plane. This is where the nasty people on this planet go. But it doesn't exist beyond that. That's it. And it is the very thoughts of the people on the planet that create it. It was never created by God. It's our own doing. Now, Silverbirch, so meditation is a very important tool. Very, very important tool. If you want to explore stage 5, really the only way, and it's not just spiritualism, any philosophy will tell you that if you're going to explore yourself and the upper planes, you need to be able to meditate. That's like as fundamental as learning how to read is to your education. It is that fundamental. And it is so fun. I'm going to read to you from a book. It's called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, written by a Tibetan master of Buddhist philosophy, Sogyal Rinpoche. And from this book, which is well worth reading, I'm quoting from page 57. This is what it says. The gift of learning to meditate is the greatest gift you can give yourself in this life. For it is only through meditation that you can undertake the journey to discover your true nature and so find the stability and confidence you will need to live and die well. Meditation is the road to enlightenment. In our philosophy, the road to enlightenment is walked by using meditation as a tool to link you with guides and teachers on the other side. Under their gentle guidance, you will find the stability and the confidence you need to help you cope with your life as you have chosen to live it. Now, people meditate for all stages of spiritual awareness. In stage one, a meditation can simply be a moment's reflection on what life is all about. In stage two, a meditation can be a form of a prayer as we seek help from God, whether it be for an illness or anything else. In stage three, meditation begins to allow some of the light of the higher planes to filter through into this opening consciousness. And there are some very meaningful experiences in stage three. In stage four, the light of the higher planes is readily accessed. You just tune into it. And our guides and teachers now have access to our consciousness. And this is where we really bloom. This is where mediumship really blooms. And this is the work that we do inside development circles. And in stage five, we actively seek a closer relationship with our guides and teachers, knowing that they will help us grow closer to the essence of God. Can I ask how much time I've got left? I can't hear you.
Just a few minutes, Dominic, but I don't really want to stop you.
Well, in that case, as we set off on the spiritual journey, we actually seek greater spiritual awareness. I want to make this point, and it's a very important point. Don't expect life to get easier. The lessons will not stop. What will change will be your perceptions of what these lessons actually mean, and therefore the effect that they will have on you. Your understanding of life should now make you a happier person, even though these lessons are going to continue. This change in perception is gained through years of meditation and contemplation of the human condition. It is gained when you can relate to others and understand their weakness. And when you can look past that weakness into essentially what they are. Human beings, loving human beings. It's opening up of the self. Some people call it the opening up of the heart chakra, if you like that sort of Eastern terminology. To open an energy centre, to again use an Eastern terminology, is to experience the lessons associated with that energy centre. It is like opening up a door to a new realm. You walk out into this new realm and you had better be ready for what the lessons are coming your way. And the only way to build it is to be ready, is to build up personal experiences at that level of the centre you wish to open. Spiritual advancement brings lessons in life that probably would have been there anyway, but you have a better way of coping with it. But you can see through what it's trying to teach you. Because remember, in the end, that's what we're here for. We're about learning lessons. Okay, so what is the stage 5 really all about? Okay, this is the crux of it. It is about acceptance and surrender. Because we accept who we are. This is very important. We need to accept ourselves for what we are. We were born this way for a reason. We're not perfect. Goodness, if you were perfect, you wouldn't be here. So you need to accept yourself for what you are. That is what was intended. And your task is to try and reach for something higher. That's all it is. Reach for something higher. So who was it intended by? It was intended by you. That's the answer. You agreed to be who you are before you came to this physical plane. In stage 5, it is not a matter of accepting that as a fact, because acceptance of that was done in stage 2. In stage 5, we accept the consequences of our decision to be who we are. And we accept that as a starting point, and we move forwards from that, using whatever skills you have, whatever new skills you're going to get through your practice of meditation or whatever else you practice. And in stage 5, I said we surrender. We surrender to the will of God, in as much as we are able to discern what that will might be. Because really, we do not understand God, and we need to be very, very careful when we say that. But if you've reached stage 5, one of the things that you will know is that you're not perfect, and the will of God is always about helping other people. That's what I have found. If you think the will of God is about helping yourself, well, then you're not. The communication's gone wrong somewhere. Again, our guides come to help us understand what this means. Communicating with our guides and teachers is all about learning what we are meant to do if we're going to follow this path of being a servant to the will of God. And we are God's children. And the last point I want to make is, how does God deal with his children? With unconditional love. Look at your faces out there. You've lived a long life. You know you're not perfect. But I want you to understand that there's a thing out there that understands your life and understands who you are and understands why you have done the things you have done. And you are loved unconditionally, regardless of all that. You need to understand that. And we must surrender to being loved. Put our fears aside, particularly as we get a grey beard and the hair goes white. Put our fears aside and understand that we are loved unconditionally by God. So we surrender to that joyfully. I think I better stop there. There is more, but I will stop there. I just want to wish every one of you, particularly the people who are new to this philosophy, you have just started on a wonderful journey. You have no idea what you've done. You've done something truly remarkable. I wish you well. Best of luck to all of you. My love to all of you.